Hi, good morning. Welcome to this webinar right before Easter. Really happy that so many could join. Today is going to be about business flexibility, what it means in 2021, and how you can really accelerate what you're already doing within cloud, within machine learning, AI, digital transformation, and so forth. And since we are, most of us at least, are in home office, well, so is this webinar. It's being live from my home office. And this is sort of how it looks like with no makeup on, with the monitors and some open source software, streaming that to go to webinar. So stay tuned for our next webinar. We're going to still playing around with new technologies and try to put some interesting content out. But then let's go to the webinar. Now, what if I told you that 80% of companies today, they're struggling to operationalize new value creation? So what that means is that if you run hyperscaler projects or you run machine learning or DevOps or DevSecOps or trying to tackle site reliability engineering or just trying to migrate to hyperscalers, 80% of companies are still treating that as projects. So they're not getting those benefits company-wide for several reasons. And by the way, these numbers are all supported by leading analysts. On the other hand, our dear consumers that we depend on as businesses, they can literally feast in services coming in from all over the place. You have different transportation services. You can get your packages way faster than before. You have new ways of ordering, new payment methods. You can have food at home. You can have your fridge order automatically. And you're also seeing services that are specifically aimed for the elderly digital generation or the youngsters. And right now, this is more, of course, this has been accelerated by the COVID. So whenever you do education or you really need to do stuff distributed, so a lot of startups are popping up all over, and a lot of established companies are really trying to tackle this. So the reason why we are bringing this up is because our mission is to enable you to either stay a market leader or to becoming one. And the value we add into this, what you're already doing, we will try to make you more operational efficient. We'll try to accelerate your flexibility. So make sure you have no hidden costs in your architecture. Make sure that your talents are able to scale this out throughout the organization and take all these benefits company-wide. So let's take a look at a few companies that we work with that we are doing this currently. So imagine that you are living off transportation and your current business model is simply getting people from A to B. Well, really, traditionally, you're okay as long as you turned up on the bus stop or the particular stop, you put people in and you get the payment, right? And then hopefully you will get somewhere on time. So the whole business model is around just getting from a place, and hopefully you will get to. It happened to be that technology is now available where you can track your users, you can use different forms of data, you can wake me up 4 o'clock in the morning and just make me sure that I will be in Gardermoen or Arlanda at a specific time. So we work with companies that say, look, that's fine, but we are going to get people wherever they have to be on time. Now, in order to do that, based on the fact that that's used the last 2 decades on building a platform which are based on taking money from people going from one place and then hopefully getting there, this is flipping it completely around. So you have to work with different sorts of data. You have to work through cross-functional teams. You have to operationalize value in a very different way. You have to tackle new forms of compliance, because if you're tracking me as myself through my cellular phone where I am, or working with data in social media to predict, for instance, what's happening on the way between my location and Gardermoen or my work or whatever I have to be, that's a very different digital platform than you have had previously. So, and this is quite a change. Now, other companies that we work with have gone from, imagine you're selling cigarettes and you've done that since the 1880s. And then suddenly you see, look, well, I'm not going to be that relevant in the future if I continue this path. I still have a lot of revenue. I have tens and tens of billions in revenue, but the margins are going down. There's still competition, and my next generation customer are not going to like me very much. So imagine you go from that and you go transform your business to promoting a healthy lifestyle, non-smoke future, healthy lifestyle, next generation customer. And also imagine when you have, if you have like thousands of applications, which this particular customer did, you're going to take a look at that, reinvest in some of that, move some of that to a hyperscaler, make new landing zones, but you're also making fundamentally new value streams, products and services for your next generation. So, and how do you actually do the flexibility to do so? That's a bit of the things that we're going to talk about in this webinar, how you can go from that state to a completely different state, and you can use technology as an enabler, and you can work smart with partners in order to move that forward. Another example, imagine that you sell tickets, and people from Norway like myself, and maybe also in Sweden, will love to go to the Canary Islands, right? So we buy the ticket, and we buy partner tickets. They like the travel agency. They sell us a lot of tickets with a bit of market on top, and they're just selling us tickets, and they're hoping for the best, right? And usually it goes well, but there's a lot of competition. The margins are going down, and you have a lot of different actors, a lot of different vendors out there that can provide competitive services that sort of guarantees you an experience. So what if you went from that and you have to charge for travel experience? You basically giving the ticket away with zero profit, and you pay for experience. And well, this particular one, I would probably pay money for this because I have a 4-year-old at home, and I value my vacation a lot these times. And this is a bit of a different experience, something that I would like to pay money on. And how do you do that when you have built your foundation based on the fact of reselling tickets in an ecosystem where you have partners? You're selling sort of the two, you're selling tickets to a prompt state and to a destination, but you're not really guaranteeing any experience. Now, the reason why we bring this up is that these are things that a lot of companies are finding out that, you can get these sorts of value out to your customers, no matter if you are in the finance industry, if you are a travel industry, if you provide public services, or if you are a startup. And the reason why this is happening is, of course, technologies and consumption models coming in from hyperscalers. You can build value way faster than before. You can integrate it through end-to-end codification. So what that means is that if you're doing this in a proper way, you should treat your code on functional functions the same as you do infrastructure. So we can do on the infrastructure and operations level the same as you would do on your functional code. Machine learning is starting to approach. We are calling it AI. Well, it's not really AI yet, but it's going in that direction. And it's also changing the way we work. And it's a lot of opportunities for companies out there to use that to enhance their business, but also disrupt others. The statistics regarding machine learning and big data is still around 90% are still not able to move that beyond a proof of concept or making that into end user value for the future generation of customers. So we are doing okay, but we could be doing way better. And that's one of the reasons why you would work with someone like ourselves to bring that to life, to scale what you're already trying to do. So if you're making this journey, if you're able to transform, if you're able to put these pieces together in a way that allows you to be as flexible as you can in your business, no hidden costs in your architecture, ability to take in new innovation to strengthen your technology strategy continuously, able to absorb any change in the market or penetrate a new market just because you can expand your digital platform so you can support a different segment. If you do that, you are 10 to 20 more times likely to gain customers, to retain customers, and to be profitable. And again, these are numbers supported by analysts. So because of this, because the upside is here, more than 50% of companies in Europe, they will increase their budgets in 2021 when it comes to infrastructure and operations to tackle digital transformation. And this is not only applications being shifted from the data centers and into the public cloud. It's a lot of this is tackling new greenfield applications because 20% are not only doing this in a project, they're taking the benefits company-wide and they're gaining new clients. So what areas do you have to cover in order to do this? Because you can spin up a project and you can play around with the technology. how do you not only start flexible, but you can stay flexible, meaning you can actually scale that growth that you're looking for in your new business. So our approach to this is to take a good look at your technology strategy. So just because you have one today doesn't mean that it's valid in 2021, right? So, and this is a big discussion for many companies, but it happened to be since tools are being more specialized, you can do end-to-end quantification, and there's very different ways of creating value. So if you're doing DevOps for 6 years, that's a bit different than doing DevOps in 2021 when you do it distributed with machine learning as part of DevOps. So taking a good look at your technology strategy and making sure it's fit for your business outcomes, that's usually where we start. And we see a lot of companies have some good ideas, and then we help them to take discussions like, okay, should you use AKS or Fargate based on what you are trying to achieve? And there's no right answer in terms on the technology level. There's just a lot of technologies out there. There are 30,000 companies that provide SaaS, and it can be quite something to navigate. Now, when we've done that, we take a good look at your current capabilities. And most companies out there, they have some talents, and they have someone that is in charge of pushing the bar, pushing forward. However, I would say 99% of the cases, we see that there are some holes in DevOps, there are holes in DevSecOps. You're not really filling all the capabilities you need in order to really make this company-wide. So you can do it as a project. We see a lot of companies doing DevOps with very good developers, but for instance, they're missing a cloud infrastructure architect in there, which can help them to codify the foundations in this whole Kubernetes platforms that they are setting up. Or in DevSecOps, just because you have a CISO doesn't mean that he should sit inside the DevSecOps teams, because that's more about operationalizing code and fitting innovation process to the security process, fitting security to innovation. So make sure that you work with partners that can come in with these missing pieces. And I would, of course, like to put forward that we are one of those partners that can help you. Now, when you have stuffed your capabilities towards some proposed outcome, it's all about having the proper collaboration methods fit for 2021 standard on technology. So this is where we usually bring in DevOps. And if you're doing DevOps, maybe start talking about site reliability engineering, which almost 80% of mature DevOps organizations will start to look at in 2021 and 2022. It's a way where you have a software engineering approach to operations, which makes it even more effective, more reliable, high quality, and allows you to be even more flexible, and also allows you to use your resources more effectively when you're going to do new things. So, and there's a lot of things in this box: DevOps, DevSecOps, extending DevOps with Sec. 50% struggle to do that, to fit security into the new innovation process. And that's also one field that we are really helping our clients to tackle so they can accelerate their strategies. And last but not least, whenever you set the team ahead or you're getting some success, the key here is literally scaling that success. So just because you're doing something nice, it doesn't mean that it's scaling. So to be able to take this company-wide, I'm going to show an example later, you have to extend your DevOps and your SecOps and your SRE teams with 24/7 services. Maybe you need someone to do front-end operations. Maybe you need someone to do guided operations or platform operations even. So you have your talents and they are free to take on new tasks. One of the worst things that can happen with the DevOps teams is that they get stuck with commodity, and you should use third-party services and partner services to avoid that to happen. So that's a bit of our approach as Base Farm to helping our clients to increase that flexibility. So what approach is most effective for transformation? We have done optimization for many years. We have replaced VMware versions. We have tried to put 3-tiered applications into containers, and that's fine. But when you talk about transformation, going from a cigarette company to promoting a health lifestyle, how do you do that? What's the approach? So, and for some of you, maybe this is no new news, but maybe it will be later when we'll take a look at how you connect this to infrastructure. Well, first of all, you act like a startup in money. You act like a startup. So, and if you're an established company, you have money, you make a bet on a vision, and you make a bet on some talents, just like a startup. And what you will do here is not just to cover technical roles, but you're trying to make this a cross-functional team. So you have security people, you have developers, you have operations, you have usability experts, you have the business, and you have executive support of that. And what you're doing with this team is to make an MVP. For some customers, they can't fill all these roles themselves, so that's where you would work again with a partner that could help you to fill some of these roles if you don't have all yourself. And this is not about titles, it's all about the mindset of the people that to give the task of doing that transformation. At least that's what we see in the market. The ones that do that, they succeed more than the ones that they're just pulling together people with the proper titles. So what these people are doing is that they are going down the MVP track. And we have been mentioning this before. An MVP is an approach to making a product with the exact features, security, operational capabilities, usability to a specific customer group. So you're not trying to solve all customer groups, you're trying to solve one specific one. And you can bring things to life in a very short time, which I'm going to show you later in this presentation. The key thing that you're looking for here is to penetrate the market fast and precisely with exactly the high quality that you need to get benefits on more than revenue. You also have some visibility, you have marketing, you have a lot of different benefits. So making a product for this generation, which is very relevant, extra relevant now during COVID, is different than making something for these guys. And it's very different from making some for this generation or this person. My generation, just with hair. It's you have to make your MVPs targeted at the specific groups. Now that's fine. We understand products, you have to be targeted and so on. What about the supporting digital foundation? What about that? Do you set it up? Do you do a migration? Do you iterate on top? What do you really do? So the situation right now for us that when we're building digital platforms or building it on Azure or AWS or GCP and even on-premise, there's so much happening on the multi-cloud infrastructure layer. From one vendor, for instance, AWS, they launched 88 new services and features in 1 week. Now, those are features that can fundamentally turn around your competitive advantage on, for instance, how you do machine learning, just like that. And there are coming thousands of changes every year, and it's going much, much faster than before. And your key to success to be able to exploit this opportunity is to do that end-to-end codification and make sure that you can move new technology in fast in order to stay flexible and bring forward your competitive edge and stay operational efficient. And you will use all that infrastructure to make the landing zones. Some is for your 3-tier applications, some is for your container engines and microservices. And then you also have data, which is becoming part of your infrastructure now. And it's not only the data in your data warehouse, it's all sorts of data. And that is the core infrastructure for your machine learning. If you're going to do smart machine learning and AI, you need a certain feed of data. That's it. Machine learning eats data. That's really what's happening. Because of this, all your policies, all your compliance, they are at constant change. So continuous compliance is very different than compliance where you sign off on a policy and you put that in a drawer and say, okay, we're not going to change this for 1 year. We're going to release functions and software the exact same way for a year. That has changed, and so has all the infrastructure around this. So because of this, the MVP approach is also valid for the infrastructure part. So if you are doing the MVP on the top, make sure you are doing the MVP approach also on your infrastructure part, so we're able to connect the dots from end to end. And by the way, end to end, this is also true for DevOps. It's true for the different types of toolings, for machine learning, for observability, for how you use frameworks. The well-architected framework, for instance, you should do continuous iterations. So it's not something you do one time and then you finish. This is a continuous running product. And the reason why you do that is because you're chasing new business outcomes, you're taking in new opportunities, so you're feeding this new money from new generation of customers and even existing customers buying fundamentally new services. So one of the effects that we are looking for here when we take this approach is to speed up your product development by tenfold. So for some companies that we work with, it has actually speeded up tenfold. And the way we have done that is that we have taken an MVP approach to building, for instance, an account vending machine, which allows your product teams to bring in or offload and unload product development cycles much, much faster. Within compliance, within continuous compliance, exploiting new forms of technologies available on tap from hyperscalers or elsewhere. Now, the reason why you would do this again is because the opportunity for product development teams, it changes constantly, and you need to put yourself in a position where you're able to exploit those new opportunities coming in from infrastructure, from technologies, and putting that into sort of a way of working together where you can also be compliant. So it goes through all the stack. This is one of our favorite things to do with clients. The other effect we're looking for is you being able to penetrate new customers, new customer segments, new markets, making services that you have never made before faster to the market. And also, in addition to that, the new generation are also looking for jobs. So attracting new talents into your organizations, because the new kids on the block, they want to work in a modern company. Like they want to work in a modern company that has a modern approach to value creation. And they are already doing this at home. My 4-year-old can provision an S3 bucket from AWS as much as our storage team. It's the way we integrate the services and the way we make this come to life. That's where the value is. And this generation, they will know that. And they are very important for us in the future. They are our future customers and the future workforce. Okay, so one of my favorites is whenever you engage with new value creation, you're also engaging yourself in new challenges. So let's say that you invent a teleporter, which was invented in Star Trek, and you make that come alive. That's great. We can now travel very fast, or holograms, or all other different things. Whenever you do this, you also have operational challenges, security challenges, continuous compliance, your policies change. So in this particular example, the belt on Spock will keep his suit on the platform, but it's not going to protect him from half of his body being sent to Mars and the other body to, I don't know, Trondheim or Gjøvik or, wherever else. So the key point here is when you engage in new value creation, you also have new operational challenges. And if you're able to take that and bring that as early as possible into the innovation process, going down the MVP path, you will be most likely more successful than you are today, because the whole world of operations and compliance is also changing because we are making things differently and the technology works differently. And even value is being perception differently. So one customer that I would like to move forward is our dear Ruth here in Oslo. And again, we have been talking about Ruth before. I changed the headline a bit, so they will provide where you need to be services for all generations, including cyborgs. And we're actually getting quite a few cyborgs in the world right now. So that is relevant because they're built differently, right? So you have different challenges when you're going to pay or get on the bus or even through security controls. So the router approach was simply that they sat down a few years ago, many years ago, 2015, 2016, and they looked at how public transportation would be in 2025. And they quickly saw that, well, it's certainly going to be a bit different than right now. We're going to have different environmental policies. There's going to be some political pressure on different means of transportation. We're going to have to cover bikes, hoverboards, still maybe some diesel engine things, but we're going to have a lot of electrical trams and electrical buses and electrical boats. So how do you handle that? And then you have the whole consumer side in this. So what they did, they sat down and they played around with an MVP to see, look, how could we do fleet management in 2025? How does that look? And they made an MVP, and based on that, they started to invite partners in. So we sat down with Router and other partners, and we operationalized their first MVP of their next generation fleet management platform using AWS as part of the infrastructure and a lot of other modern tooling, cloud native toolings. And we integrated that also in a hybrid sort of data layer. So what we were doing here was really building an MVP of the new fleet management. And we did that in possibly 12, 15 months, which would have taken probably 5 to 10 years if you did it in a traditional setting. Now, it's not that we couldn't handle that in the traditional environment, but it would be too big a risk, and we would have to work differently with the technology, so it would be more expensive. And personally, I programmed AI machine learning through Lisp like 20 years ago, but it's just really inefficient because you don't have the compute capacity, you don't have the consumption models, and it's not supported by any technology or companies around that. And that has actually changed. So what Router here are doing, they are exploiting all the opportunities in the market within compliance, because they are under strict national laws of compliance, to bring that to life for their customers, all generations. And just seen in media that they're now also talking about self-driving buses. And as you may imagine, that might require a very different set of security than just thinking about firewalls or code quality. Ethics comes into play, moral. How do you tackle that in the future? Well, that's also a bit on future roles that we're going to cover a bit later in this presentation. But you are an established company. You can't just do cloud native. How do you handle that? How do you go from where you are today in addition to building me? And the fact is that most companies that we talk with, 80%, they are trying to do both. They are trying to tackle optimization, but they're also trying to tackle transformation. One of the challenges that they're doing is they're trying to keep it in the same box. And that is really hard because you're doing fundamentally different things that we're going to talk about even later. So the cloud now, it's more than 15 years. I think it's 16 years. It was introduced as a word by Google executive in 2005. And we in the IT industry, we have had our way with this ever since, right? So we have everything from cloud pricing models. We have cloud infrastructure ready on VMware, our 3-tier applications. We have cloud optimized containers. We have taken our old application, jammed them into containers. We have all sorts of operational issues and challenges there. And then we have the microservices generations, the cloud native applications, serverless, and all the things that you can do with that. And then you have machine learning coming in, which is going to make this even more complex. So how do you tackle that? How do you take what you have and you bring it closer? So one of the first things that we do together with clients when looking at their current portfolio is to try to find out which part of your portfolio is worth reinvesting in, and which part of that should get replaced with SaaS. And that might sound very obvious, but we're seeing this over and over again. That we tend to go down the migration path too early, instead of taking a good look at our portfolio and linking that to business outcomes. So what part of your portfolio is worth reinvesting in if you go from selling cigarettes to health providing, non-smoking company, right? Maybe just 20%. And those 20%, if you migrate those, how can you make those investments last as long as possible and run that as efficient as possible? And then we go on the 7 R's, which goes on refactoring, rehosting, replatform, and all those sorts of things. Now, the challenge here with the 7 R's is that once you have done the migration and, it's a straight line in the end there, that's not really a straight line, because that's when you bring the proper operations models. It's a huge difference on operating 3-tier applications, traditional applications, comparing to how you would work with microservices. Microservices are another dimension of complexity, and you have very different security challenges than you have in your traditional environment. So whenever we do this, what we will try to help you to do is to put these different applications into the proper operations model, so you are effective, you are flexible, you are able to free up your resources, you don't use your architects in places where they get stuck, and it will really help you to bring forward that competitive edge of yours. So talking about generations, being in IT and growing up with IT for for a couple of decades, we tend to use the same words for different things, and they mean very different things. So I'm going to go through some words that you might hear in industry and from also professionals, just to clarify what they really mean. So we talked a lot about lock-in when it comes to transformation. It's dangerous to get locked in, right? Traditionally, that means that you put yourself in a situation where you can swap IT solutions. So don't get locked into Linux, or don't get locked into Microsoft, or don't get locked into one tool. Well, in transformation, that's quite different. Lock-in here is more about being able to exploit the growth opportunity. So if you're not able, for instance, to take in machine learning toolings in your DevOps, or if you're not able to bring new technologies in to penetrate a new market, or to make a service cheaper, or to put SaaS as part of your technology strategy because you have deliberately chosen IaaS also for your future, that's what we mean by lock-in. So it hinders you to move forward. In the public cloud world or in the new world, I mean, you should have 50 tools, not only one tools. So, and picking one tool, well, you're going to get locked into that tool. The important thing here is connecting that tool to the benefit of using that tool. So, and that's a very different thing than doing lock-in. And by the way, when you work with modern tools, you shouldn't be locked in because you'd be working through APIs. It's not something you install with servers that have a huge cost to you. It's the lock-in part is just different now than it used to be. We also talked about portability in old times, going VMware versions, or moving one VM from one data center to another data center, or some will say moving from one hyperscaler to another hyperscaler. In 2021, when you talk about portability, you should worry more about portability of competencies. So if you go serverless on one hyperscaler, well, you're pretty much going to use that. You're not going to take that and replace that with another serverless language just like that. It doesn't give any value. So if you have chosen the correct technology strategy, your portability in terms of tooling, it's fine. It's a non-worry. What you should worry about is having the competencies, your key competencies, portable. So for instance, if you start working with Terraform, you should be able to not only use that on AWS, but also in Azure and GCP and even in your data center. You have to keep that Terraform competence close to you, or work with partners like us that will keep that together with you. So portability is all about competencies and capabilities, not switching workloads from one hyperscaler to another. And the dear scaling issue, which has been and is an issue when you talk traditional application, infrastructure and apps. Are your infrastructure scalable? Do you have enough data center? Did you build your apps correctly? Where do you do the scaling? Well, in the cloud native world, that should just work if you do it correctly, if you integrate applications correctly, if you do the infrastructure setup configuration correctly with AWS or AKS or Fargate or whatever you're using, that should just work. The real worry here on scaling is capabilities and growth. So for instance, if you're doing DevOps, how do you scale DevOps company-wide? Or if you're trying to do machine learning, how do you go from a project to company-wide? Or if you want to do DevSecOps, how do you make sure that doesn't hinder the development process so you can reach your time to market? Those are your worries in terms of scaling. And this is really some area where you really need to work with partners in order to make not only scale, but scale sustainably, meaning your income goes more up than your costs. And the dear cost management, which traditionally is a lot about reducing costs and getting the costs under control, right? You should never spend more than this. Well, in a cloud native world, if you build your architecture correctly, then what happens here is that you have no cost before you have the income. So if you put people on a bus, the moment someone pays, you spin up all the infrastructure and services that you need in order to serve that client. You have the cost, and then you kill it. Then you shoot it down. So cost in a modern world should be a positive thing, because 1 in cost automatically means 2 in income. So we're talking more about cost analytics and the ability to accelerate profit dynamically through linked cost, which is the way you should do it if you're able to do the cross-functional team approach and do your architecture properly. And that is going to increase your flexibility in order to also penetrate new markets, make new things, because the income should come before the cost. And working with partners, a lot of us have vendors that call themselves partners. That's a bit changing in the world of 2021. We are still working on contract fulfillment with other clients in traditional ways, but we also work in symbiosis with our clients. So we have shared KPIs, we have shared responsibility models, we work inside our customers' DevOps, we align behind their business goals, and that's just the way you should work with a partner in 2021 if you are to accelerate your digital strategy and turn all these obstacles into opportunity and stay flexible for the future. It's a very different collaboration model than we have seen in the past. And I mean, when we are a part of together with the customers, you also create way more bandwidth with your partners rather than having a siloed approach or a triangle approach where you go through one stakeholder. There's almost no bandwidth there. And here you have way more bandwidth. You're getting more done if you work with the correct partners. So we're going to start to sum up this webinar a bit. But first, we're just going to play a little stinger for you. Okay. So one key learning of ours, and for some it might seem obvious, but we're still seeing a lot of companies not doing this. Differentiate cynically on optimization and transformation. If your core product today is wine and you have a proud legacy on that, continue to optimize that. You are going to squeeze more juice out of the grapes. Now, that's one sort of business. When technology allows it for you to go from a winery to wine restaurants providing the wine experience together with food, where families or friends can sit down and have a meal and have a whole tour of experience, that's a different business. But technology now, it allows it to be very easy to move into different businesses. But that's a different approach. That's where you use the startup approach and keep optimizing what you're doing. It's nothing wrong with what you're doing today. It has brought you where you are today and you have a lot of success. But don't confuse that with transformation. Those are two fundamentally different things. That's why we have startups. So really differentiate on those two things. We talked about having talents. One of the things you could do and you should do, also recommended by our dear friends, the hyperscalers, AWS, Microsoft, is to establish a cloud business office. And this sort of represents your two-state organization in its complete state. So it's not only tech people, it's business people, it's HR, it's organization development, it's architects, it's a lot of different things. And you use the cloud business office or cloud center of excellence to help your talents to scale this company-wide, and you also help to build a foundation in your company for your new operating DNA. And this is very important. This is usually where we also work together with our clients. There are very few companies that fill all these roles themselves. And this is all about the capabilities. It's all about the competencies and experiences. It's not so much about the titles in your organizations today. So staff this with people that can really hold their ground on different competencies they need. And as you can see, there are a lot of roles. Use the cloud native tools. I can't stress this enough. Take a good look at the technology strategy, and a lot of credit to that, but put it in the drawer, make a new one for 2021 where you look at what you can do with cloud native tools. And don't worry about getting too many tools, because these are different tools than you worked with in the past. In the past, you bought like a portfolio with many different functions, and it was very costly. Here you have SaaS, PaaS, very specialized tools, and they integrate fantastic through APIs. So you should have 50 tools, not one tool. And it will enable you to do really smart things with your infrastructure, with your operations and developments, and increase your flexibility if you do this correctly. And we have gone from mainframes to more optimized infrastructure, clusters of data centers, and now being moving into a very new world, the complexity of microservices, machine learning, and so forth. And this is also true for organization models, which is why a lot of companies are engaging in the SAFe framework, because they see the organization is not siloed anymore. To get the benefits, you have to work cross-functional, you have to do MVPs, you have to work in tribes, and you have to find ways of scaling the success, and you're doing that differently than before. So, and also this is one area where we would really like to help you to tackle this complexity and turn these challenges to opportunity for your organization. Another favorite of mine, all companies have talents. Make sure you keep them. And right now it's more important than ever, because these guys, they have a different view on value, which again links to different quality perception at your customers. And keep these guys close to your heart, have executive support for them, help them to do innovation labs, and also remember that talent attracts talent. So if you have talents, they're gonna attract more if they feel happy. And you can also use this to scale and also to attract partners. And also be sure to attract some talents from your partners, so you can work in cross-functional teams, you can enforce your technology strategy, you can move into DevOps, SecOps, machine learning ops, and all those different things with those new talents and operationalize new values. So talent for what? Well, I took a little look around and I found approximately 1,000 new jobs that are relevant that we almost never heard about. So I set up just a few here. From our point of view, we have the usual suspects like DevOps expert, DevSecOps experts, site reliability engineers. Only on that level, these roles that we've been talking about for years, 50% of companies are struggling to attract those talents. So you could work with partners like us to fill those roles. And then you have all other types of roles that are upcoming, such as hologram designers, digital implant designers, fusionists, and you even have the AI compliance officer, which is going to have a very crucial role in terms of making sure that AI and machine learning stays within ethics for the market that we're trying to reach and be a player in. So before we go into the last slide, I just wanted to put 6 situations for you where we usually help our clients, a bit of high-level situations. But what we see is that most clients that we work with, they are in the middle of at least 2 of these situations. So one situation is where you have to optimize and enhance your portfolio. So typically you have your applications, you need to go through the seminars, you need to migrate some, your margins may be falling, your profit is more or less, and you also see the opportunity amongst hyperscalers that you just do something there, but you're not able to scale that company-wide. So that's one situation where we can help you increase your flexibility, increase your operational efficiency, and really accelerate that what you're doing, sometimes through the MVP approach, sometimes through other ways of working together. Another thing that we see quite often are customers and companies that are playing around with hyperscalers. They have done things in Azure, for instance, but they're struggling to take it production-wide because of compliance. And if they've taken it production to end users, then the security is sort of hindering the time to market because they're using gated security processes from the traditional world. So this is where we usually help our clients to fit the security process into the innovation process. So turning on cloud-native tools like Azure Security Center or AWS Security Hub, and helping you to do security as part of your CI/CD, so you can reach your time to market in an MVP style way. Another one, which we are quite often used to, are customers that stayed with hyperscalers for a long time. So, I mean, the hyperscalers has been here for almost a decade. But as you may imagine, as things happen in the data center on Cisco and VMware and all that physical infrastructure, well, at Amazon and Azure, it happens things in 7 years. So if you were an early adopter of hyperscalers, that's fine. In 2021, you have a very different challenge. You have to rethink your DevOps. You have to get into site reliability engineering. You have to add machine learning to DevOps in order to be sustainable and take it company-wide. And you have to staff very new roles. And you also have technologies of landing zones coming in from all over, which you're not on today. So this is where we can help these clients to speed up the product teams and to also help the operations teams and DevOps teams, DevSecOps teams to scale for the next decade, which is going to be quite different than the last decade. We also work with companies that would like to take machine learning and replace some human processes. And that's quite a tricky one because that's where you get the union involved, right? Because you are replacing people. So I'm a big fan of fail fast. You should fail fast, but you shouldn't fail fatally, right? So getting this right whenever you go big bang, it's quite important. So we help companies to do that and to adopt machine learning with data pipelines, separate from data consumers and data producers, and make sure that you are able to actually do this so it doesn't become a fiasco. Another one, since we are trying to tackle machine learning, yet 90% failed so far, being sustainable in your AI and having AI which is smart enough is actually a big thing these days. So we see a lot of companies playing around with machine learning, but I mean, the result is sort of like doing something that a human do better. So in order to tackle that, it's certain things that you have to do with your data. You have to have enough data. You have to transport it correctly. You have to do your algorithms correctly. And these are also areas where we can come in and help you to tackle that if you're interested in pushing the bar on what's possible to do with machine learning. And my personal favorite, quite interesting, 10 to 20% of the companies that I talk with, they, in addition to doing lift and shift, they are also trying to disrupt themselves. So they are trying to build a digital platform and a foundation, a digital competitor, which disrupt themselves before the competition do. And this is where we take a very strong co-innovation approach. We work on bleeding edge products you don't see in the market yet. Very different approach than going safe and sound. So if you find yourself in one of these situations, please reach out to us and have a chat with us or contact me on LinkedIn, and we can see how we can help you and how we can move together forward. So technology strategy, complementary capabilities, modern collaborations, DevOps, DevSecOps, machine learning ops, and make sure that you scale your success, to scale your DevOps, scale your SRE, scale your DevSecOps, and work with the partners that can be in symbiosis with you. And then you will increase your flexibility way more than you have done so far. If you would like to go more in depth in any of the topics in this webinar, please reach out to me on my LinkedIn, or you can also go on our webpage in Norway or Sweden or the .com version, and you will find different ebooks, different sorts of contents, and also find our contact information to our different teams. Thank you so much for staying here in this webinar today, and stay tuned for more webinars, and we'll keep playing around with technology and see what we can do on the next webinar.